Hello, everyone. Welcome to the 11th meeting of the Corporate Services Committee. I would like to begin by acknowledging that the City of London is situated on the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Lenape-Pewak, and the Attawandaron peoples. We honor and respect the history, languages, and culture of the diverse Indigenous people who called this territory home. And the City of London is currently home to many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit people today. As representatives of the people of the City of London, we are grateful to have the opportunity to work and live in this territory. I would also like to inform those watching that the City of London is committed to making every effort to provide alternate formats and communication supports for council standing or advisory committee meetings and information upon request. To make a request for any city service, please contact accessibility@london.ca or phone 519-661-2489, extension 2425. And to make a request specific to this meeting, please contact csc@london.ca. And colleagues, members of committee, I'll look for any disclosures of pecuniary interest. Seeing none, we will move along to the consent agenda then. I have not been made aware of any councillors wishing to have anything pulled to be voted on separately. So I will look now to see if anyone wishes anything pulled separate. And seeing none, we can then deal with questions and comments on the consent agenda. But first, I'd like to get a mover and seconder so we can get the consent agenda on the floor. Moved by Councillor Fife-Millar and seconded by Councillor Cassidy. Any questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Morgan.
Yes, thank you, Chair. On 2.1, the Strategic Advocacy Framework Annual Update. Obviously very happy to see the continued progress on this, and I actually very much like these reports to see how we've done in a very specific way on our advocacy. I think from being on FCM and AMO, it's helpful to see the summary report and to let other members of council know the types of things that maybe we are aware of because of our close engagement with government relations and our staff who work on this. I probably should include Councillor Cassidy in that as well, and the mayor, who obviously are involved through their work on AMO or FCM committees, and the mayor as well. But it's good for the rest of council to see this. The one piece I had a question on is as we work through county liaison committee and partner organizations, we've had a lot of discussions on the joint advocacy approach that we commonly support. So there may be things that the City of London is supportive of that other agencies or governments like the county would be supportive of, especially when we have ministerial delegations through things like AMO and vice versa. And I wonder if there's like, I certainly don't know if this report is the right place to receive updates on that, but I wonder if our friends in GR have any comments about where they see, as we move more into joint advocacy, where that would be reported out or where that information would be shared with council on our success in supporting or being supported by others in our advocacy approaches.
And we'll look to see if does staff want to provide any comment back on that? I know Mr. Thompson is in the meeting. I know it was more comment that questioned Deputy Mayor, but I just wanted to see if Mr. Thompson had anything to add to that in follow-up.
Absolutely, and through you, Mr. Chair, a great question as we continue down the road of more strategic advocacy at the City of London. There's been, more than a few examples of where the City of London and the County of Middlesex, and even more broadly than just our immediate region, have undertaken joint advocacy initiatives. There are a couple places where those could be reported. Certainly the place where you'd expect to see, I think, the most direct update on those advocacy statuses or advocacy wins would be in the reports to committees on the issues themselves from the service areas. that's where we would incorporate our government relations lens into the reporting back to council. And then you'll see there are a number of other opportunities where we tell this story as well. This could be in report publications or correspondence with other governments. But to answer your question, to answer the question of the deputy mayor through you, Mr. Chair, is we would expect to integrate. We will, and will continue to integrate updates on GR on government relations pieces into the reports on those issues when they come back for committee to review.
Thank you for that, Mr. Thompson. Also want to recognize we don't have any other members of committee looking for questions or comments, but Councillor Van Holst has joined us. Welcome, Councillor. And the floor is yours now to raise your question or comment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my question is regarding 2.7, which is the city road allowance on Princess Street. We're declaring that surplus, and it looks like we're offering to sell that. I'm asking in two parts. And I wanted to ask about part one, because I believe it's contiguous to the Allen Rush Gardens, so one of the London Middlesex community housing properties. And I wonder if staff had a discussion with that organization about acquiring the property, because I believe that is one that's high on the list for a rebuild. And it seems to me that that property might be a worthwhile thing in that instance.
Well, as a board member of LMCH, Councillor Van Holst, I appreciate that question, and I see Mr. Warner is with us. So, Mr. Warner, can you provide Councillor Van Holst a response on that inquiry?
Yes, through you, Chair. We did canvass with the assistance of the Municipal Housing Development Office, the London Middlesex County Housing Group as well. We had extensive meetings and did a detailed review of what the opportunities would be for them to use that land. And through that process, it was determined that they did not have an interest. They declined their expression of interest for that land. And on that basis, we're asking council to consider declaring both parts surplus and selling to the adjacent property owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Warner. Councillor Van Holst, did you have a follow-up, or did that answer your question? I just see your hand still up on Zoom.
That answered my question, and I'm of course in that instance in support of this direction by staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no other names on the speakers list, we will then open the vote on the consent agenda.
Closing the vote, the motion's passed 6-0.
Thank you, colleagues. That finishes the consent agenda. Today, we do have a number of items for direction under Part 4 of our agenda. These are all applications for issuances of proclamations at committee's will. We can either deal with these as a group or we can deal with them individually. So look for Councillor Fife-Millar.
I'd be happy to deal with them as a group, but pull 4.3 if I could, please.
Okay, and I will also, Mayor Holder's got his hand up, and I saw Councillor Cassidy's hand. So just to give everybody a chance to weigh in on this, so we know how we're proceeding. Mayor Holder, you are next on my list.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Certainly, I'm prepared to second moving them as a group, but at the appropriate time, I would like to talk to 4.1 briefly.
Certainly, and I will make sure to put the timer on you, Your Worship, so that we do keep you brief. Councillor Cassidy, you had your hand up. Were you looking to second as well, or did you want to weigh in on deal? Okay, see your thumbs up there. Okay, so we have a mover and a seconder for all of the proclamations with the exception of 4.3. And now we will look to some questions and comments, and I will go to Mayor Holder first.
Thank you very much. I wanted to acknowledge, Chair, through you, Terry Fox Week specifically. I have to tell you, having a very strong personal relationship with the Fox family does not constitute a conflict. But when I was a federal member of parliament, I had the honor to meet them in a number of occasions. And what inspires me about what the children do throughout our city is when they do the Terry Fox Run and all to fight that horrible disease that took Terry's leg. Considered by most as Canada's greatest Canadian. I will tell you, this proclamation certainly touches my heart, and I'm confident it will have the support of council. And I just want to give a shout out to all the individuals, be they volunteers or others, who support this Terry Fox Run, and the committee itself here in London, of which I participate in a number of their events, for the work that they do, not just to keep Terry's memory alive, but you recall that we have the Terry Fox route mapped out, chaired by various signs in East London, and also all the way through to downtown and up Richmond Street as well, to commemorate his run through our city as well. And the memories I have are certain ones I treasure.
Thank you, Your Worship, and that was definitely brief, so we appreciate that. But also the sentiments, of course, I think are ones shared by all of council in terms of the impact that Terry Fox and his family have had on this nation. Councillor Cassidy has her hand up next, so Councillor, we'll go to you on the speakers list.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I almost called you Mr. Speaker. Sorry. Just want to echo what the mayor has said, and what many people might not realize is how much the Terry Fox Foundation has contributed to cancer research in not only in this country but around the world. Millions upon millions of dollars, and because of that funding, there have been great strides made. And people think of cancer as one monolithic disease. It's not. It's every type of cancer is its own unique disease. And so making headway requires focus on each and every one, and that requires funding. And so I too, as a cancer survivor, as a sibling of somebody who was not so lucky as I was and didn't survive, and many family members who have struggled and survived cancer as well. I am very grateful for the great work that has been done by the Terry Fox Foundation, and all of the accomplishments that can be directly related back to the funding that has been provided by the Terry Fox Foundation. So, and my family has run in different cities. I've run in different cities in the Terry Fox Run. My children have walked many, many years. As the mayor pointed out, all the schools do their own Terry Fox walk or run. So it's wonderful to be able to proclaim the Terry Fox proclamation here in the City of London. And again, if we look at the two other requests for proclamation for blood cancer and for leukemia and lymphoma, this is a disease, multiple diseases, all related under the one name of cancer that affects so many people's lives. I know in my ward, Lucas High School does their annual event, the Relay for Life, all again towards cancer research and cancer funding. And this is a disease that touches every single one of us. So I'm grateful for these different organizations in our community and in our country that are doing this kind of awareness and funding and research work. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. Do we have any other speakers to the proclamations? Seeing none, if the committee will indulge me, just a brief comment from the chair. The issuance of the proclamation for National Coaches Week. There are thousands of volunteers in this community who give their time and energy to support young athletes in sports, in varied sports, individual sports, team sports, and at various levels. And whether it's somebody who's devoted some time coaching our incredible Olympic athletes, who of course made London a golden city and brought home more gold medals from the Olympics than the rest of Canada combined. We think of folks like Damian Warner and Maggie McNeil, or whether it's the coach who's helping the Little League baseball team or the House League minor hockey team or the soccer team. They make such a difference in young people's lives. And so I think that this is a really important proclamation to highlight as well, and just take the opportunity to say thank you to the coaches across London and across the region who give their time selflessly to our young people. And seeing no one else's hands up, we will open the vote on all the proclamations except for 4.3.
Closing the vote, the motion is passed 6-0.
Thank you, colleagues. That brings us to 4.3. Which is the application for issuance of proclamation, the 230th anniversary of the Black Loyalist Exodus, 15 ships to Sierra Leone. Councillor Fife Millar, you asked to deal with this one separately, so we'll start with you.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, very much appreciate the information that came in. This is obviously something that's extremely strong on the East Coast, and I fully understand why that is, but I don't see a real strong tie to London in itself, and so this is not one that I would be supporting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other speakers to this one? Mayor Holder.
Thanks very much. I'm comfortable supporting this. I understand the point that the councillors made, and we always make extreme efforts to have things localized. And I guess I'll declare a conflict in one sense. It's not really, but that I am a United Empire Loyalist, and my family hails from Cape Breton on my mother's side, and so I'm mindful, particularly as we honor London's Black history as well. It may well be a stretch because it's extended to Nova Scotia, and I respect what Councillor Fife Millar has indicated. But from my standpoint, I guess because I do understand a little bit of the history as it relates to this particular situation, and why they made a decision to travel, to basically to leave. I'm empathetic with it. And I'll respect that others may not choose to, but it certainly is part of Canada's history, clearly part of Nova Scotia's history, and indirectly part of mine. So, but I'll regard whatever council members say.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll go to Councillor Cassidy next, and then I'll just let committee members know I'll ask Councillor Hamou to take the chair briefly so I can share my comments as well. Councillor Cassidy. Oh, you're on mute, Councillor.
Darn it. Thank you. I'm happy to second if the mayor is moving that we issue this proclamation. I'm happy to second that. I also think that they're coming on September 1st. It is a really good tie-in to the entire month of August, which we just accepted as issuing a proclamation for the month of August as Emancipation Month. So I think that there is a really good tie-in to what's happening locally, and this really is a Canada-wide issue. We've talked about this before, where we didn't get a local sponsor for a proclamation request, but we still passed it because we saw it as something that affects London as part of the larger whole. So I too am happy to support this.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. Councillor Hamou, if you can take the chair just for a moment.
Sure. Thank you. Councillor Sean Lewis, please.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Like Councillor Fife Millar, I'm uncomfortable with supporting this one, not because it's not an important piece of Canadian history, but because the proclamation is meant to be something that's marking an occasion that our community is connected to, and whether that's, you know, and the mayor spoke earlier to Terry Fox and the important connections that the Terry Fox Foundation has had here in London and across Canada. And to Councillor Cassidy's point, certainly the proclamation for Emancipation Month, very important, and we see that coming forward from the Wien Black Community Centre and Pastor Sandy Thomas as the sponsor there, and that local connection is strong and important that we recognize that. But as I've done with other proclamations, and I recall the Never Give Up or Don't Give Up Month or day that we were just asked to proclaim, and we just received when that came through, with no events or ties to London, with no recognition of a day here in London. If we start to, in my view, if we start to just say yes to all, then we are actually undermining the value of the proclamations that actually are tied to London and have that strong London sponsorship. So I won't be supporting this one, not because the history is not important, but because it's not, in my view, a London issue to proclaim.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to turn the chair right back over to you. There's no one on the speaker's list.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer, although I do see His Worship is raising his hand again to be on the speaker's list, so we will go back to you, Mayor Holder.
Thanks very much, Chair. As I said, I appreciate if some council members choose not to support this for the reasons that I think you and Councillor Fife Miller have eloquently indicated. At the same time, I think this is rather unique. I would also add that we as a council provided significant financial dollars in Quebec, and it was not a proclamation for something that did not impact us directly, but certainly indirectly. And I think the issue of Black emancipation certainly impacts us all, probably directly and indirectly as well. So I'm not here to convince other council members to support this. I appreciate Councillor Cassidy's second. I just hope you'll all reflect on it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. I see no one else on the speaker's list, so we will open the vote on 4.3 now.
Closing the vote, the motion's passed 4-2.
Thank you, everybody. That 4 on our agenda, the items for direction. We have nothing in item 5, deferred matters and additional business. So we now move on to item 6, which is the confidential session. I will look for a motion to go in camera. And the reasons we are going in camera are we have 5 items, 4 of which deal with land acquisition, disposition, client solicitor privileged advice. And the 5th item is labor relations employee negotiations. So we'll look for a mover and a seconder to go in camera, moved by Councillor Hamou and seconded by Councillor Cassidy. And we'll open the vote on that.
Closing the vote, the motion's passed 6-0.
Thank you, everyone. For just a moment while we secure chambers and get the appropriate people into the Zoom meeting for these items. And we will, for those who have been watching, we will return to adjourn from public session after. Welcome back, everyone. We have returned the Corporate Services Committee to public session, and I will now call on Councillor Hamou to report out from our confidential session.
Thank you, Chair. Progress was made on the items 6.1 to 6.5 in confidential session. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hamou. That concludes our agenda for today. So committee members, I will look for a motion to adjourn. Everybody wants to stay, okay. Moved by Councillor Fife Millar and seconded by Councillor Hamou. All those in favor, we can do this by hand.
That motion's carried.
Thank you, everyone. And if you're keen on continuing committee work, Planning and Environment Committee starts at 4.